to NTI. This is week 2. This is the take 2 for me because I just did a recording that was going to be 17 minutes and I didn't have a mic selected. So yeah, that was awesome. Anyway, this week we are going to look at jaguar coat genetics and the process of meiosis. We're basically going to summarize the things that we moving forward a little bit, because the majority of you wanted to continue with the jaguar story. It wasn't by much of a margin, but slightly so. So without further ado, because man, your time's valuable too, right? Let's just dig right in. All right, now our assignments this week, there's going to be the meiosis project that you can see the details of. You're going to go through the steps of meiosis and use some type of form to explain the steps briefly, but you can see the details on that. Make a song or something about it, make a drawing, make a cartoon, make a video, whatever you want to do that will meet that rubric that's included in that. The other assignment is that we're going to try Edpuzzle one more time. I know a few of you had a problem with that, but let me know if you still have a problem with that. Hopefully anyone that still needs a device has one by now or has access to one for at least long enough to do this. It's a 9-minute thing with questions in the middle of it. So you have to keep watching it. If that was a problem before, you can't leave focus on that activity, otherwise the video will stop. Now, if you hear the very faint sounds of the demo reel from a keyboard, that's my oldest son over in his room, but you probably don't, and you have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, moving on. Now, the focus question we were at there was, why do two parents sometimes have children that have the same version of a trait as they do, and sometimes have children with a different version of the trait? Hopefully you have some kind of an idea about what the answer to that might be now. And pursuant to that, let's talk a little bit about genotype and phenotype. This hopefully is a refresher. I think I've talked about it before, but here we go again. So phenotype basically just means the observable trait of an organism. Trait or characteristic is what's edited out there, and then there should have been an of after that, but I'm not going to fix it at this point. An observable trait that an organism has that is shaped by inheritance but can also be modified by environment. In our case, we've been talking about coat color in the jaguars and a couple of other things, but we're going to stick with the jaguars. Now, the genotype is the combination of genes, in particular different forms of the same genes, which we call alleles, that contributes to a given phenotype. Now, here are some terms I'm going to go through right quick and explain. So an allele, remember, that's the form, a form of a particular gene. In the jaguar, we were using black coat color and spotted coat color as the phenotypes, and then we're saying here's a hypothetical gene F that codes for black coat, with the understanding that there's a whole bunch of other intermediate steps in this metabolic process to create a color, like in your own hair as well. There's a whole bunch of steps. But for the purposes of our example, we're just considering that as a more simple system with a single gene. Now, a lot of things you can do that for, and it works okay, until it doesn't. But for this, it worked out fine. So big F for the black coat, little f for the spotted coat. Now, why do we have a big F and a little f? Well, you're going to see. Phenotype. So again, that's the observable trait. See, I just copied and pasted that from the other slide. Okay. It's shaped by inheritance and environment. Now in the jaguar, again, that's the black coat versus the spotted coat. Genotype. So that's the alleles that contribute to a given phenotype. Now remember, in eukaryotes, vast majority of, there's always exceptions to almost every rule, but broadly in eukaryotes, in animals, animalia, because in fungi this is not true. And plants get all crazy with the number of copies of their chromosomes. Animals is pretty straightforward, and this we're talking about jaguars anyway. We have a copy of chromosomes that came. We got one set from our mother and father, so that we have two. So that we are there we go. So here in this example, the options for genotype include big F, big F, big F, and little f, little f. That have, well, I don't want to give that away yet. So here we go. Dominant. Now the term dominant means that there's one allele that determines the phenotype, regardless of what the other allele codes for, what it looks like. In the jaguar, if you have this combination of big F, you have a black coat. Big F also results in a black coat. Little f results in a spotted coat. Therefore, big F is dominant over little f. And that's usually the notation when we're looking at Mendelian genetics, is we're looking at the big F, the big letter is going to be the dominant, and the little letter is going to be the recessive version, which brings us into recessive. One allele gets hidden, not expressed. And in the jaguar, the only time you see the spotted is when the individual has both of the little f's, one from each parent. So it's only expressed when there's no big F. So an individual can be said to be heterozygous for a particular trait when that genotype consists of more than one type of allele. And in the jaguar, that's the big F, little f. That individual has black fur because the big F is dominant, but they also have the recessive allele too, the little f. So if they have offspring, 50% of them are going to get the little f. And so again, two versions of the same gene, and makes it a heterozygote. Homozygous. So that's when the genotype consists of only one allele. Anyway, we are diploids, right? We have two copies of each chromosome, and therefore you can be homozygous, so that you have big F, little f, little f. So, yeah. Now, here is the evidence that would have led us to this. We have say this is the mother. So we know she has two spotted alleles because I already spoiled the recessive bit there. Then if she's crossed with a male who has two black alleles, it can have two forms of that, right? It could be the big F, or the big F, little f. In this case, the offspring got one black allele and one spotted allele, making his fur color black. If this guy was heterozygous, then there was a 50% chance that she could have an offspring that looks like her. Or he could be homozygous, which means that, if he's homozygous, then the offspring is all going to be black for forever. All right, next. Now, this is how we kind of figure that out. I want you to particularly note here, so if we have black and black, sometimes you get spotted. This is parents and offspring. But when you have spotted and spotted, you only get spotted offspring. That's how you spot the recessive in classical genetic experiments. I know you would have done this with fruit flies. Lots and lots of fruit flies. Okay, moving on. Meiosis. Now here's a simplified version of that. You have a parent cell, and in this whole process, we're producing gametes. Okay, we're producing, which are sex cells, so they'll mature into either sperm or egg, right? Okay, so the chromosomes will replicate themselves. So here you have what would say we have two copies. Here we have 4 copies, right? And then we have a division. We're back down to 2 copies, and then we get down to 1 copy by the time we're at the final product. So if we're going to make some observations about this, the chromosome from the father and mother line up, they replicate, the cell divides, and you separate these chromosomes. and then it divides one more time, where now you're left with a single copy. So these are haploid instead of diploid. Okay, so here's the meiosis process. You are going to describe the phases. You don't have to memorize them or anything. Just give me a description and follow the rubric that's in the assignment, right? Again, if you have any questions about any of these things, I am online from 10 to noon and from 1 to 4. I don't have the camera and mic on all the time, but I'm listening. I can hear you if you pop in. Okay, so feel free to drop in, ask me any questions. I give you my number. You can text me. You can call if you really have to. But hopefully, like you, hopefully most of you would prefer to text that way anyway. But again, if you need to talk to me, I'm here, and you can hit me up on that Meet especially. And I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, again, let me know. Good luck in these assignments, and I'll look forward to seeing your projects. All right, goodbye.